The foundation itself is a non-for-profit organization founded here in Berlin, or based in Berlin, in Germany. And in order to bring attention to, well, to media and around the world, it has a lot of famous names, superstars even, on board and on the committees, such as, well, the one we see here, Antonio Banderas, Richard Gere, Nicole Kidman, Sean Penn, and so on. I guess that we all know them, more or less. Also UN Secretary Ban Ki-moon, Mikhail Gorbachev, and so on. And the foundation, it was founded through private donations and from parts of the annual Cinema for Peace Gala, which is also in connection to the gala. It has dinners, charity dinners, and in order to charity auctions in order to bring money to the foundation. Partners for the Cinema for Peace, as we see, a lot of famous companies and also NGOs, as you can see here. The agenda, what is the Cinema for Peace about? It is about to promote, or the agenda for peace, Cinema for Peace is to promote peace and international understanding through the medium of film, and also that goes with movies, documentaries, short movies, and so on. Furthermore, it's also to raise awareness of social relevance of film and to make active use of the influence of movies. We all watch movies every now and then, if it's going to the movies or going to or watching the TV or whatsoever. And since it's such a powerful tool, basically using both images and music, it's a good way in order to bring focus and attention to what is going on socially, politically, and also humanitarian challenges that we see in our time. What the Cinema for Peace is also about is to create a platform for peace and tolerance, bringing people together. This Berlin Film Festival is quite a big event taking place every year, so it's in taking use of that opportunity that there are so many people coming in from around the world. If there are actors, superstars, and all the media as well, to bring them from all around the world, and also since there's also other stakeholders, to create a platform for them to talk about what is being shown at the Cinema for Peace, all the documentaries and movies. Also, it's about raising funds to charities, which are in cooperation with the Cinema for Peace, and those are these ones. UNICEF is basically well, not the biggest one, but has been on board for quite a long time. Also these, Sean Penn, for example, and other like Elton John, they have these superstars, they have their own foundations, and taking use of their image, their name as their brand is a quite powerful way to, it's called, I think, the superstar effect or something, in order to bring focus and to make sure that, well, it's easier having a brand like a superstar in order to get funds. The vehicle they're using is obviously movies and documentaries. And as I mentioned before, the Cinema for Peace Gala is in connection with the Berlin Film Festival. Last year in May 18, there was the first dinner at the Cannes Film Festival in France in order to honor the work of Sean Penn that he did in Haiti with his foundation. Also, what Cinema for Peace has created is the Green Online platform, and that is it's an archive of films that raises awareness and informs about sustainable development, ecological issues that we see today. If it's climate change or saving dolphins, it's a platform to see documentaries from there, to get feedback and to get in touch with people from all around the world in order to talk about these issues and hopefully find a solution. Also, the Cinema for Peace Foundation has a school film festival, and this is about teaching children and young adults about the issues or the challenges that we face today. If there are, and they basically always focus on something that is very present, more or less, or something that has taken place quite recently. If it was the Arab Spring, or if it was about a climate conference taking place somewhere in the world, they would focus on this and either invite school classes to come to a cinema and show a documentary that was taking place, that was shown at the gala, or they would actually come to schools, because it could be a matter of economic issues, in order to teach these children or show the movies, and then later gather them and talk about their impressions or their thoughts about what they just saw. Also, the Cinema for Peace has thematic screenings, of course, also on topics depending on what is going on, what is relevant, or what is current in the newspapers or whatever. They have symposiums and fundraising dinners as well for any of the foundations or the charities that are in touch with or cooperating with the Cinema for Peace. Every year on this gala there are a couple of awards handed out. These are the ones. Most Valuable Movie, Valuable Documentary, if it's the International Green Film Award, the Award for Justice, International Human Rights Award, and the Honorary Award. As I mentioned before, the Green Online platform to promote environmental awareness. These are the Green Film Award winning movies since 2009, 10, and 11, and 12. Very good movies. I can recommend all of them. Now, the target audience for the Cinema for Peace, obviously, since it's taking place within the Berlin Film Festival, it wants to target out to the international star guests for them to also participate in this with their names as a brand in order to get more media attention, and also global personalities from the world of film and media and politics, business, and furthermore also to the society, because at the very end it's about bringing awareness about the social, humanitarian, political, economical issues that all the movies are thematically about. Right, so this year's gala took place at the Konzerthaus here in Berlin on February 13th. And to the right, we see the movie award winners of this year. Movie of the Year in the Land of Blood and Honey, and so on and so forth. And the Peace Honorary Award went to Angelina Jolie and the cast for The Land of Blood and Honey as well. So I guess that was a very good movie, if anyone's seen it. And that was it. So I'm happy to take any questions from you, if you have any. If not, thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Virginia. We now have a wireless microphone, so I'm hoping that we're not going to stay shy. We had a rush this morning, so we moved the questions to the panel discussion, but I really do want to encourage you, use this opportunity, ask your questions, make your comments. We really want this week to be an interactive dialogue. So we know it's after lunch, but it was a short lunch, so hopefully there's not too much of a food coma, so to speak. Please, questions or comments for Virginia. Or for each other, regarding also film as culture diplomacy, cinema for peace, or any of the topics. Okay, well, come to the front, and if you could also introduce yourself, as always, would be great.
Hello, my name is Vlad Jecan. I'm a lecturer in media studies at the University of Babeș-Bolyai, and I have two questions. First, how do you measure the success of Cinema for Peace, and what is the nature of the content? Because you were very brief on that. I'm very interested in seeing what are the most specific elements of films that promote peace.
Thank you for your question. First of all, how to measure success. It is very difficult, of course, as you might. I mean, how to measure success in this field. What the Cinema for Peace is about is to bring awareness on topics that are currently taking place. If it's climate change, if it's the Arab Spring, so they get documentaries or movies that gives different perspectives. So it's not just what say, the German or the Berlin media or whatever, that is the only perspective that you get or the source of information. So there's more to it, so it enriches it. How to measure the success? It's not easy. It's a very good question. It's.
I'll rephrase that. Why is it worth continuing the program? Just because we have stars.
Well, the reason for using stars.
Of course, another reason for using stars, but why continuing the program if you cannot measure its success?
Just because you don't know how to measure it, or we don't measure it in economic terms, doesn't mean that it's unsuccessful. I believe that it gives a lot of perspectives. It brings out, we all know that media or film as cultural diplomacy the film itself might not bring peace, but the people that see it, they are the ones, I mean, film doesn't change the world, but the people who sees the film or the documentary, they can be changed through the film.
Let me add just an underlining statement there, too. It's a very important discussion you both are having right now, and it's actually one of the challenges of cultural diplomacy as a whole. And I think it's one of the reasons why the public sector, to a large degree around the world, does not practice cultural diplomacy. If I'm a president, or let's say I'm a presidential candidate, and I want to be reelected in 4 years, cultural diplomacy is probably not going to help me. Because the problem with cultural diplomacy, A, it's difficult to quantify, B, you have to wait. In the sense, let's take an easier example, academic exchange. Probably everybody in this room would agree academic exchange is a great thing. Let's make it easier for people to have mobility to study different places. But how do you prove it? How do you put it on a budget sheet and say, okay, me as foreign minister, if I invest €5 million in academic exchange, that's going to help me to get more business to Germany or more trade? It's tough. So I think there, just to underline this conversation, it's an important conversation to be had. I also don't have a great answer. In some cases, you can quantify by looking at numbers. How many exchange students were there? Another great way is to look at examples. For example, to say, okay, these people who are now in power did an exchange program when they were younger, and maybe that in some way impacted or opened their mind to certain things. But in essence, it is tough. So it's not also really answering your question, but just underlining the fact that that is a challenge, not only of this particular program, Cinema for Peace, but in general. My recommendation is to try to show results wherever possible. If you have cases where maybe there are testimonials where someone's life actually was affected, where they actually say, look, because of this film or because of actually traveling to this country, now I really do see my own identity differently, as well as their identity. So it's possible, but it is tough in that case. And I think there we shouldn't be discouraged and not do the cultural diplomacy because of that. I see now you've inspired a hand in the back, so give the microphone to Darnell for a second.
Yes, thank you. How do you quantify success in film? My name is Darnell Stephen Summers. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I've been in the anti-war movement for over 40 years. I'm continually working with the anti-war movement. My specialty is working with soldiers within the United States military. We encourage them to refuse, resist, and rebel. Now, within that work, over the years, I'm a filmmaker, and I've become a filmmaker, and primarily because of the work I've done in the anti-war movement. Because when we were interviewing soldiers or helping them to desert or to counsel them about conscientious objector status or whatever it may be, we found it was necessary for us to start to film them. And I could relate a lot of instances about the filming and what happened to the movies, but I just want to talk about one particular thing in terms of quantifying the success of film in the peace movement. I had the occasion maybe about 2 years ago to meet a soldier who had just returned from Iraq in Baumholder. And we had a conversation. He was there with his wife and their young baby. In fact, he hadn't even seen the baby until he had come back home. And it was a very emotional scene because I was there the first day that he had come back. And so we entered into a discussion, myself being a Vietnam veteran and him being a current veteran of a hot war. We had a lot to talk about, and we exchanged experiences and stories. And so somewhere towards the end of the conversation, he asked me, he said, did you see the movie Loose Change? Loose Change. You know Loose Change? You guys know Loose Change? I said, yeah, I saw it. He said, yeah, we saw it too. In fact, I saw it in Iraq. And then he went on to relate a story to me. He says, you know, we were passing the movie around, and our company commander, he got wind of it. And he called me into his office. He says, let me see that film. So about 9, 10 days later, he summoned him back into the, I say office, but it must have been a tent or something. And he summoned him back into his office, quote unquote. He said, man, I watched that movie. I liked it. I'm going to give it back to you. But don't let anybody know that I saw it or that it even exists, because it's against regulations for us to pass this around or for it to be distributed. And so, and then the soldier said to me, you know, he said, Darnell, he said, that movie kind of puts the whole war into question. So, we have over 30,000 soldiers who have deserted. Deserters right now. Somewhere around this planet, you have 30 to 35,000 soldiers who have deserted. You have one soldier a day who commits suicide. Art and culture and music all play their role in influencing people. You know, in a certain sense, yes. In the broadest sense, it's very difficult to quantify, you know. But believe you me, that these movies, who's ever making them, however they're being distributed, underground, overground, or side the ground, or however, they have a tremendous impact on people. I, as a former soldier, I remember looking at All Quiet on the Western Front. I don't know if you know it, Investigation Noise. Tremendous effect on me. Showed me the contradictions which exist inside the military. It shows you what's going on, what's at risk, you know, what's at stake, and what's your role within that. So, you know, there's so many ways to deal with this, but let it be said that we need to have people committed within the industry and even outside of it to making that social statement.
Thank you, Darnell. Are there comments or questions? Okay, one more. Okay, let's take a final question and then I'll introduce the next speaker.
Hello, my name is Camilla Marucco and I come from Italy. I have to confess that cultural diplomacy and arts are not my field, and so this is my first approach to the theme, but I would really like to thank you for your presentation, because I've often been thinking about and discussing with people about hot themes or historical aspects and dimensions of story, events, people's life, and I see an increasing need of people nowadays to see, to experience the image, you know, to experience by visiting the very place where the thing happened. And I know it's all about personal sensitivity. Personally, I do not find it that such a powerful vehicle. It's important to preserve history, to preserve the places where things happen. This can convey an idea. This can maybe start the engine of an internal growth about hot themes. Like, for example, a current issue was, I was talking to a friend about the Holocaust and the need to say, okay, that's an historical lesson, we really must learn from it. What is the power of images, pictures, and places, especially for a generation like mine who did not experience anything like that, not even indirectly. And he said, oh, I think that I've been reading, I've been thinking about it, but when you visit the place, it should be even stronger. And I say, you know, it's up to everyone's sensitivity, but I think that movies, they are so complete, and they could be the vehicle, really, as you said, because I don't want to sound retro, but a movie is a text to me, so it's not only image, because image itself is so to say, is not there to stay. It leaves you kind of temporary footprint, and then as the wave comes and goes, it flows, it disappears. But an image with text and a story and the music, then, and if behind that you have a director, you have a kind of craftsman, then I think that might be the way to go. So I think there is a huge power, really, as you all said already, in movies and this kind of industry, in shaping and maybe contributing also to civil society. So thanks for your presentation.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you. And I agree. That is, I mean, I guess that most of us, if not everyone, has a movie, at least one, that really touched us in one way or another. And what Cinema for Peace focuses on are those films and documentaries that are not just showing beautiful images or this heartbreaking story. It's taking, I mean, they're talking about real issues that needs to be handled or talked about, and what they do instead of having, well, to just take a comparison to newspapers where they have, say, no nationality mentioned, but just a foreign journalist going to that country, taking notes, seeing, taking pictures, reporting back. It's not the same as having a person from that place where it actually is happening from their perspective to emphasize their voices or that just that feeling that person has, because we can't really walk in anyone's we can't judge if we don't walk in someone else's shoes or put ourselves in that situation. And that is also what Cinema for Peace is trying to do, just to show different perspectives, basically, to make sure that if it's posting a question that is that irritates us, or if it's taking up subjects that are taboo, that we don't speak about because we don't have a direct resolution or solution to it, doesn't mean that we're not supposed to talk about it. That's what I think.
No, I think so too. There's another question in the front, but just to add to that too, I think what's fascinating with Cinema for Peace is it's also privileging films in a different way. It's not just who's the best actor, who's the biggest budget, or what's the newest gimmicks or action, but it's actually saying, look, this is a film that did more than just entertain, but it actually is also making a contribution towards peace. In a similar way to the Sundance Film Festival of Robert Redford, again, trying to privilege more alternative films, Cinema for Peace is really doing it when it comes to peace. So I think that's also what's unique with this initiative. Final question here, and then we do need to move to the next presentation.
Farouk from Turkey again. What we are discussing about the movie, but actually the cinema itself, film industry itself, we have to check the connection between cinema and the reality. Actually, cinema is recreating the reality from the angle of the view of the director. So in this case, everything, every story, every regie depends the deception of the regisseur. In this case, my question is cinema, even also image, as she said, as a democratic tool? Is it a real democratic tool? Because, first of all, it's my point of view. I mean, if I look to an apple, one side is that, other side perfect red. Which angle is for this? Angelina Jolie's story about in the land of honey and blood and honey. Yeah. This is another point of view. She's right. But again, from the point of view of Angelina Jolie. So now what we have to get? We have to get the point of view of her, or the truth, or the story itself. So in this case, my question is cinema democratic enough to a tool that we have to use for peace? This is another question.
It's a very good question. Thank you very much. And you're perfectly right. It is, depending on who is behind the camera, that is their perspective that we see when we watch the movie. Cinema for Peace brings up a lot of directors, a lot of producers behind the camera. What they are trying to focus on are also, I mean, to get a variety. Obviously, if you shoot a movie in Afghanistan, they would like to have an Afghan sitting behind the camera. That cannot always be guaranteed, but that is due to different reasons. But that is, I mean, best case scenario. If you would like to have your own or the real perspective, however you want to put it, I mean, best way would be to obviously go there yourself and experience it. That is unfortunately, I guess, not possible for everyone. But it's, like you said, it's an additional perspective. In this case, it was Angelina Jolie and her crew, but other movies are showing other people's perspectives, depending on where they're from and their previous experiences as well, of course.
Well, thank you. I'd like to respond to that as well, but before I do so, I'd like to ask you all to please join me in expressing our sincere gratitude to Virginia Palm for an excellent presentation. Thank you. Thank you. No, just as a brief response, because I've thought about this issue a lot as well. When I was initially studying in college, I was studying history. And the reason I chose history is I wanted to find out the truth. I wanted to find out what really happened, here and here. The first thing I learned as a history major is that there is no truth in history, and it's all interpretation. And I was initially very frustrated. And you could say it's the same frustration with international relations. Is there any truth in international relations? Is there one truth when it comes to this issue or that issue? The way that I dealt with that is I created this analogy. If we were to imagine that we were in this room and it was totally dark, so this room actually has no windows, so we have a start, but no lights. So imagine totally, totally dark. And our task as a cultural diplomat or as a historian is to find out what's in this room. As a historian or as one cultural diplomat, you have a flashlight. And a flashlight is good because you can actually look inside and get a pretty good idea with that flashlight of what's happening. But the problem, as you were pointing out, that's only one flashlight. That's only one perspective. And I could, through this flashlight, look at the shadow of an object, and the shadow looks like a monster. And I can see the teeth and the ears, and I'm sure with my one flashlight, that's a monster there. However, as soon as I get a second flashlight from the top, I see, it's a seat with a pile of clothing. And that's sort of the dilemma that this historian has. I think it's the same dilemma the cultural diplomat has. So I would say, in response to your question, let's get as many flashlights as we can, is the first mission. So let's get as many films as we can, let's get as many experiences as we can. That's the first lesson learned. Second lesson learned, we have to always be humble enough to realize we never have a fully illuminated room. So even if we're absolutely sure that there are weapons of mass destructions in this country or that country, realize that maybe we're not absolutely sure. I realize that maybe we're wrong. And I think if we have more humility in foreign policy, and also more humility in cultural diplomacy, our policies will look differently. If we're not absolutely sure of A or B, our policy should reflect that and realize, all right, maybe we're wrong. Maybe we don't. Even if I've done my PhD in this, I don't know. So I think that would be my second response. I think they're a valid point. But I think to respond to your point, we need more films. We need more perspectives. We need more discussions. And also more humility. So just as a brief response.